Hello everyone, and welcome to another double page scrapbook layout process video where I'm going to be scrapbooking these photos from Brandywine Falls that the CDT girls and myself went on a little hike to the falls. You can't see any photos of the falls here. Let me assure you they're spectacular. I was printing these photos and hoping I was going to get more of them printed. My Epson 8700 printer that I use at home was low on 2 of the colors, and it managed to print 4 of them until it stopped printing altogether. It's a little bit frustrating because I did order the inks well before Christmas, and although they've received my order, and I didn't order them through Epson, I'm just letting you know I ordered them from somewhere local so I could just pick them up, but they haven't arrived. So I've gone online and ordered them from Epson and hope that they come in the next couple of days so I can put the final photos on here, because I've got gorgeous photos of the waterfall. It's absolutely stunning. This was a fun little stop on our way to Whistler, and I wanted to do this layout today because I've got it in my head. So I'm just going to start scrapbooking this and hope that my ink arrives in time. Now I'm going to use a sketch from our brand new 12 by 12 sketchbook. This is volume 3. I have 3 volumes in this binder and it's so fun to flip through them. I think I've showed on camera I actually took all the spiral binding out of this that I used to get because I decided it would be better to have them in a binder. So far this is holding up quite well. I've put the front and back in here because it helps me find the volumes easily, and I'm hoping this is going to hold up, because when I did do my order I ordered heavier cardstock so that they wouldn't get too raggy with just normal A4 copy paper. So far so good. It's holding up quite well. So the sketch that I've chosen is this one here. Now this volume is using 6x6 pattern papers, so you can see it's been designed to use 6x6 pattern papers, but it's flexible enough that you can do this with any paper packet. So each sketch has a full cutting guide so you know what all of the pieces measure. I'm actually going to bring in some Country Woods paper, which is a 12 by 12 paper, and I've got some scraps off to the side here. And the reason why I've chosen this paper is because this page that I'm going to work on today with you is actually an extension of this day. So you might remember this photo shoot that we did on the railway lines. We did this as a Creative Design Team YouTube collab. I will put a link to this video and the collab below so you can check it out. And I wanted to keep the pattern paper that I'm using for the next part of this. This one deserved a double page spread all on its own. And I want to carry on these patterns. So I've got some scraps out here. You can see I've got the blue wood grain. I've got this one here, and I've got this one here. Now these are all scrap pieces. I do have some more full sheets in case I run out. I'll just bring this sketch back in, but you can see I'm going to be able to cut some of these pieces using this sketch as a guide. So let's get on with sort of dry fitting everything to see if I like what I'm doing. So I'm going to just bring these back in again and lay them out. I'm going to have all the wood grains running in the same direction. So I'm just putting this blue piece here for now because I'm going to turn it around this way, but I just want to see how it looks either side of the photos. So I think the sketch calls for 5 pieces here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to take these 2 away and put these down. Now I've got the blue wood grain paper separated from the darkest wood here because I think the blue will be too dark up against this paper here. And because I don't have all my photos, I am just making do with what I've got for the colorways. This was such a fun little shoot. Erin did a little pose behind a tree, and then we all decided it would make for a fun group shot. So a kind lady took several photos of us peeking out from behind the trees. This photo here was just basically for me to send to my son because he was worried about me bumping into bears when we were up there. So it sort of looks like I've gone off the beaten track, but I'm not very far away from the path. What I'm going to do with this is cut this down, and because I have I think about 11 photos for this layout, I am going to use some flip flaps. So I've printed 2 side by side here. So I'm going to put one photo on top, have a flip flap and a spot for my journaling, and this one will have a spot for the journaling as well. So I quite like how these look, but I don't know if this dark pattern, I have kept this same sort of thing across here, and the reason why I'm a bit annoyed that my photos didn't print is because this 6x4 photo I'm actually making into a portrait style because it's of the falls, and I think that's still going to work quite well. So what I'm going to do is bring in a photo holder So that is going to replicate this photo here, and I need to trim my photos down a little bit. I have printed them with white borders. So this one I'm going to trim and stack on top, and I've got another photo that I'm going to do for here. And I thought I'd like to bring in some greens for the other strips here. So I've got the Graceful Greenery Vellum, and I thought this might be nice behind it. I'm not too sure. I used that on the previous page that I just showed you. So I'm just going to put that down, and I'm not sure that I'm loving that. That's a lot of pattern going on behind these photos, but I've got some more options up my sleeve here. I could bring in this vellum because it's very similar to the trees that we were walking through. So I'm just going to slide this one behind here and see if I like the look of that as well. But I think with my photos here and these strips, this is pulling focus a little bit. It's a busy type paper. It's pulling focus away from my photos. This one here is a bit of a funny story. That's me peeking out down the bottom there. I couldn't quite climb up onto these because I had a bit of a knee problem and my knee wasn't bending very well. And I didn't want the girls to have to try and push me up there. So I just peeked out from underneath and Katie photoshopped me in. I have some green here from the Season of Green and Gold. You can see this has got lovely gold foil on the other side. And this is the right colour, so I'm thinking that might work behind there, but I don't like this dark wood against this dark green. So I'm going to take this one away and bring in, now this is the same pattern here. These two might be my favourites, and I don't mind repeating one of the pattern papers here, but this is still quite dark. So I'm going to bring in another piece of paper from that same packet, and this has got the sprigs on the other side. And I'm hoping this is still available. If it's still available, I will link it below because I think I need to order another packet of this for this album. I actually like this green behind it better than this one. This is a bit too solid. This is a little bit lighter, but I'm going to do a treatment to this to lighten it up even more. So I think I might do some whitewashing. So I'm going to cut all my pieces and do the base sort of construction, but I want to cut these pieces first to try the whitewashing. I think I've got a scrap of this. I'm just going to have a little look, and we're about to post organisation videos next week as part of our collab, so that's going to be a whole lot of fun, and I have to rethink what I'm doing because if you watch my video next week you'll see I'm a little bit out of control with how I store my Stampin' Up products, so I need to get them merged into my permanent storage. They're sort of in part-time storage at the moment. So no, I don't have an extra strip of that. So I'm going to cut into this one and cut up some wood grain pieces. And then I'll be back with how I'm going to treat this paper here. So I'm going to do my treatment to these pieces of the green that are going across the top and the bottom. Now I'm going to do some whitewashing with White Daisy. And I used to do this with a sponge tool. So just one of these ink blending tools. And I had one that was specifically for white, but I can't find it at all. So I'm going to do an experiment just with a paintbrush and see if this works. I may need to smoosh this down onto a silicone mat or onto my glass mat, but I just want to see if I can get ink. Nothing is happening. Okay, put all this off to the side. So I'm going to bring in my silicone mat from Stampin' Up and smoosh some of this ink down on here. I might need to resort to my glass mat. So this is all happening while I'm experimenting. Usually I have a little play and try and do this first before I do it on camera so that I know that it's going to work. So we'll just see if I can whitewash this piece of paper. And it's coming very smooth and it's saturating the paper quite a bit. So I don't think that's going to work. I'm wondering if I just run it through this way, I might be able to make it work that way. So I'm just going to dry this off because that's a fail and clean this bit off. So normally when I do something like this, as I said earlier, I do it so that you can see what's happening on camera with it working the first time. I'm going to dry this piece off because I'm going to use this one as my experiment now. I'm just wiping that a little bit dry. It's not totally dry. And I'll bring these in. You can see it has lightened up a little bit. Maybe you can see that on camera, but not as much as I want it to. So I'm going to do something else now and bring in some acrylic craft paint. Now, what I might do is just bring this out. So I've got a little well here. Oh, I need to dust it. In a perfect world, there would be no dust. Or I would have a wardrobe style storage system. That is my dream, rather than like a Kallax unit, a cube unit, because dust gets everywhere. And if I had a wardrobe, I feel like if I could close the doors on it all, I would be able to have less dust. Now I've got two choices here. I can either water it down or I can just brush it straight on. So what I'm going to try and do first is brush it straight on. This I just put into a jar of water. It's not quite dried out yet. I do have a better brush. This is a better artist brush. This is just a cheap one that you can get from the $2 store. I just want to try it with this one rather than the smaller one, see if it'll work. So what I'm going to do before I do it on this piece of paper is just to get out some cardstock scrap here. So I'm just going to load my brush up and tap it off a little bit because I don't want this to be solid, and come off the edge and see if I like the look of that. And I think that is going to tone this down nicely. Now what I want to be mindful of is not coming in too heavy on one end. So I'm just going to dab this off, dab it off on my piece of paper, and then come in. And I really like how that's looking. So less is more when it comes to this, and also taking it off the brush a little bit. And this I will need to set aside to dry, but I think that's going to look quite nice up against these wood grain papers. It's going to give it a whitewash look, and not necessarily wood grain, but I think it's going to work quite well. So all I need to do now is continue with my other three pieces doing the same thing, and then I'll be able to wash my brush and my palette off here. Now, if you come in and it's a little bit too heavy, you can go back over with your brush just to wipe some of that ink off. And if I think I need to add more later on after it's dry, I can, but I want to see what it dries like first before I start adding too much. But I do like how that is softening the look of the original paper, even though it's got some distressing on here, with the whitewash treatment. So if your white pigment ink isn't quite giving you the look that you want, reach for some cheap acrylic paint. Now, I'm not going to have photos sitting over the top of this. I've got no idea if acrylic paint is photo safe, but my photos aren't going to be touching this piece of paper, so I'm not concerned about that for this. I'll probably look it up and check to see, but most of my photos, they aren't going to be in this case because I've printed them with a white border. Most of my photos, when I put them onto a scrapbook layout, they actually are matted onto cardstock because I really do love the look. So you can see this one I've treated a little bit more because I do want some of that white a little bit more solid. I might bring this one back in now and add just a few more bits to it. Oops. I was going to do this on my glass mat, but it does get quite glary. And with everything that's been going on today with the printing and some other things as well, we're trying to find the right pieces of paper, I just thought I would make it easy for myself on cleanup and just use a piece of copy paper. I usually keep things that are printed off that we don't need anymore, and I just turn them over the other side so that I can use them as a form of a glass mat that doesn't need any wiping. I love working on my glass mat, but this is just making it very, very easy for me. Now, this brush that I'm using, Montmartre, I'm pretty sure you can pick these up at reject stores, at $2 shops. It's got quite a thick, stiff bristle, unlike this one here, which is an artist brush, which is a much finer and higher quality. But this is working perfectly for this sort of technique, so you don't have to go out and spend a whole heap of money on supplies to get this sort of effect. Now, it's quite warm here today, so I'm hoping these are going to dry off quite quickly so that I can start constructing my page. So I'm going to go away and clean everything up, and then I will be back with doing some stamping in the background before I adhere all my pattern papers down. I laid all my pattern pieces of paper out that I had cut, and then I went around the areas here. I don't know if you can see these pencil marks, but I want to do some stamping off the edges of these. You can see I've got ink on me already. That's just from opening the stamp set. I haven't even started stamping yet. So I'm going to bring in some stamp sets and the colors that I've chosen. And I'm thinking with my photos here that grey granite is going to work because there's a lot of grey in these trees. And then I'm going to use crumb cake and pecan pie, or I might bring in early espresso for some depth. So I'm going to have a little play on my scrap piece of paper here before I actually do the stamping. I'm just going to move this off to the side. And I'm going to use textured timber and elements of text, which is brand new and in the online category as of January the 7th. This, as I said in my unboxing video, if you haven't watched that already, I'll put a link to it below where I share some artwork and my thoughts on things that I've purchased so far. But this, I think, is a must-have, especially if you like text sort of elements. I love the fonts that they've used in this, and they're different shapes as well, which is really good. So I'm thinking I will use this one and possibly stamp. I'm going to bring a photo back in. And I think I'll use either crumb cake or pecan pie. I'm going to do a combination to see how things look. Because I don't have the waterfall photos and the other photos that I'm using, I want to do a little test just to see how things are going to look for this. Because I think for the wood stamp set here, I'm going to use the grey. And you can see I haven't put that on a block. I'm going to have a little bit of an experiment. So that's the crumb cake. I probably need to bring in a white sheet. So I'll do that now. I'll get a better idea rather than on the grid paper. And I'm thinking of doing first and second. Now with crumb cake, second generation doesn't show up terribly much. So what I'm going to do is bring in pecan pie so that I can experiment with the colours. So this one is pecan pie. And that gives a little bit more depth to the second generation. This is very, very faint. But what I also want to check is how this is going to look with early espresso. So in with this one, I'm going to do the same stamping. Now I do this a lot, and I think with early espresso, I'm going to be able to do 3. So I may just do second and third generations for this. Let me just stamp this off and do another little test up here for early espresso. Quite often I do this. I'm thinking I can probably do 4th. Yes, early espresso is quite a dark ink, so you can do 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, possibly even 5th. That might be pushing it to go 6th. Let's just try. But you can, so you get a lot of mileage out of early espresso ink. Now the grey granite is the one I think I'm using for the wood piece here. Now I just want to do some rough stamping with this. I don't necessarily want the whole lot to come out. It's looking a little bit lost, so I'm wondering if I do need to put this onto a block. So let me get a block out. I'll probably get more ink on this. Doing it this way. So there's my early espresso piece. I don't know if it's too fine. It might not work for what I'm thinking of doing. Let's have a look at it with pecan pie. It's a little bit confusing, I think, because there are lines in the text. There's also lines in this wood grain. So maybe I need a different wood grain stamp. Maybe this one here will work better. So let's have a play with that. Now, when they've been adhered directly to the DVD case and you've got the stickers on the back of them, you do need to ease them off so you don't leave the sticker behind on the DVD case here. So I'm going to try this over top here and see if I like the look of that with the stamping. And I think that's going to work better. It might even be better with second generation. I think second generation will work better. I'm going to bring in another piece. I think I've decided what I'm going to do. And I know it looks like a lot of prep work, but it's good to experiment when you've got several colours in mind for what is going to work the best. So I'm going to do second, third, and 4th generation stamping for this. And then I'm going to come in with, so that was in early espresso, and then I'm going to come in with grey granite. I'm going to stamp off and do a couple of pieces like that. I think this is the winner. If I bring this back in, you can see that the text lines aren't fighting with the lineal design of the wood grain, and the text is still standing out rather than looking a little bit messy. So that's what I'm going to do for this. So I need to remember to stamp off. I'm going to take away all of these other colours. I think the more muted colours of Early Espresso and Grey Granite are going to work better with my photos. You can see how that's going to look rather than having all the other browns. They do work well, but for some reason, I just like this look the best. So I've just got to go with what I like. Everybody has different tastes. So you've got to do what works for you when it comes to these things. Well, the other thing I was going to test was maybe doing some of these splatters. Now, they're also in elements of text as well. So maybe I'll bring back crumb cake for that, because that will bring in a little bit of brown to match in with these wood grain papers. I might need to do first generation. So let's see how that looks. I don't need to do too many of those, I don't think. Just a few here and there. Actually, I'm going to go really subtle and do second generation. So here's a little thing that you can do. If you're like me and you get carried away with stamping, it can be a great idea to write yourself a little cheat sheet. So Early Espresso is going to be second, third, and fourth generation. Grey Granite is going to be second and third, and Crumb Cake is going to be second. So that will help me remember. I'm going to do all the Early Espresso stamping first. This one is my left page, and I'm just going to use this piece of paper here so I can stamp off the edge and not get ink on my Versamat. So Early Espresso is stamp off, because I'm going to do second and third and sometimes fourth generation. So I've gone where these lines are here because I want some coming out of the top. I'm going to have some coming out of this area here. I just love how this looks. Now, did I stamp out? As soon as I talk, I can't remember whether I stamp off or not. That might do, I think. I don't want to do too much of this because there are a lot of paper pieces to this layout. And then I'm going to come in and do the right page and do the same thing. I know it's hard for you to see where the actual lines are. It looks like it's going to take a lot of time because I took some time trying to work out what I was going to do with this. But it is worth the effort, I think. I'm going to have my first, on my second generation there. I'm going to come back in with a little bit of fourth generation. Then I'm going to bring in my Grey Granite, and that's second and third generation. So once you get a bit of a production line happening, it's really not going to take too long. Now, I always want to make sure that I've got some images off to the edge. I didn't actually rotate my stamp then. I usually like doing that. And I want them coming out of the edge of where the photos and the papers are going to be. So I'm going to make sure I rotate this one. Absolutely love this stamp set. So I will check to see whether it's still available. I'll do the left page off camera for you, but I think you're getting the idea of what I'm doing. And this one is second generation. So I'm just going to fill in some little gaps here. And I think this adds the perfect finishing touch. So anywhere where the text and the wood sort of meet, I'm coming in to give them a little bit of a splatter and cross over all of these. This has got a little bit of a curve to it, which fits nicely around the wood area. I might do another little bit down there. Just making sure that I stamp off so I can just see my lines here. So I'm going to do another one down here. This is quite faint. And then one around the corner of this. So that's my stamping for my background pieces. I'm going to do the wood grain and the splatters on the left page. And I think those three colours work really well together. I think espresso is one of my favourite colours because you can use it over and over again with so many generations of stamping. And people who are a little bit scared of using cling stamps, I think you saw how easy it was to use them. And the fine detail you get with this script is absolutely beautiful. Cling stamps do give you more detail within the image, so they're well worth getting. So I'm going to go away and put down my pattern papers and hope that tomorrow I get a delivery of some ink so I can print off those other photos so that I can get this recording done, because I'm very excited about how this is all looking. I've gone ahead and you can see I've adhered all my paper pieces and I'm loving how this is looking. And I think doing the whitewash on the pattern paper here has just added to all the texture on this page. So I'm just going to bring this one in here just to show you this is what it originally looked like. And I think if I hadn't whitewashed it, it would have pulled focus to the bottom and the top of the pages. Whereas this way, it looks like a wood treated piece of paper rather than a solid print. So I'm really happy with that. And I was happy with it so much that I have done something with the embellishments that I'm about to bring in and show you. But first I wanted to address the flip flaps that I've got on here. Now I'm going to cut my memory protectors, so these will be on the outside of the memory protectors, and I'll put a link in the description below of a recent video where I showed how I do this. It really isn't that hard to do. So I have changed where the photo placements are on this. Now this one wasn't too bad to do because obviously that can sit in the middle there, flip up and down. It's the only flip flap on this side. I did change the position of this one from the right page because I didn't want the flip flap too close to the edge here. Even though the flip flap is somewhat see-through, I wanted to see more of this stamping that I've done in the background here. So I moved this one to the center. And the other thing that I've done here, and you might notice this is different from the sketch, I did matte my photos on strips of cardstock. Now this is sapphire cardstock from Close to My Heart because I do still have some of that left. I wanted my photos to pop just a little bit more. They looked fine with a white border, but I love how they look on this double matting. Now I've left the edges here, but I've got the photos here right to the edge so that it looks like it's just seamlessly going across. When I open up this flip flap, I'm going to have to explain the world of pain I got into when it came to doing this. I would think I would have this all down pat, but sometimes when I actually go to do something, I'm thinking, why would I even put a flip flap on the edge of a page if I want it to flip from the top or the bottom? Because the problem is that there is an area here that you have to allow for. So originally I had this photo here on the edge, and when I was adhering my photos to these pieces, I realized I wouldn't be able to put that there because it would go into the seam. I wouldn't be able to get it to sit flush with the edge here like I wanted to. So I have moved things around a little bit to accommodate for that. The other thing that I did with this, because I didn't want the photos to go all the way to the edge here, I wanted this stamping element that I've got to be a feature here. I didn't want it to be hidden. I have overlapped my photos. I already had the white border on them, but I have just brought them in and I have put them partially on top of the photo next to them. And I had room to do this on all of my photos here because there was scenery on each side. I've still kept the main focal point of my photos, so you don't have to line them all up butting up against each other. I had to problem solve the fact that if I had laid them all butting up next to each other, this would have been right to the edge here and I would have lost all of this gorgeous stamping. Now I'm going to go on to the left side because that's the one that I struggled with my placement here. I had this originally on the right side. I had this group photo on the left and this element in the middle here, and it just wasn't working for me, so I moved this one into the middle. This is going to form the title of the page. I'm not going to put another title on here, and I have a double flip flap here. So I've got this photo. I've made sure, I'm going to bring this down a little bit so that you can see. So I've got two 6x4 top ceiling flip flaps here, and it's so exciting that these are now available to purchase. Stampin' Up have just released these with their scrapbooking brochure release. And so I've got this photo here, and then I've got a close-up view of the falls. This was absolutely stunning. This was the view from the other way of the vantage point of where you look at the falls. Such beautiful scenery, and the trees, as you can see, they're so tall. It's just absolutely amazing. So I've got my further away shot here, and I wanted to include this photo here, but I couldn't adhere it straight down to the page here because then this flip flap would not have been able to work, and I didn't want to put it over top of this photo. So I decided to go off and find a couple more photos, and they're fun photos here. So you can see Erin peeking out from behind the tree. I think Erin had this photo taken first, and then we decided, I'm not sure whose idea it was, but it would be fun for us all to peek out from behind the tree. And then I realized with our railway line photos that we did, You cross over the railway line if you saw my earlier video to get to these falls. I didn't print this fun photo, so I decided to do just a little collage of these two. Everywhere we went, we were pretty much smiling and laughing the whole time. We had so much fun. So I did want to include this photo, but when I looked at my previous double page spread, I didn't really have anywhere to put it. And then I found this photo because we all shared our photos in a shared album together. So I found this one and I thought that was a lovely one to set the scene of our walk to the falls as well. So I've got my group photo here, and this flip flap is then going to be able to get pulled up, and I took this photo of Katie taking a photo of everybody walking across this cute little bridge here. So I just need to cut the slits in my memory protectors so that I can have all of these interactive elements working. Now what I'm going to do for this is I've cut some 1 3/4 by 1/2 inch strips of some of this wood grain paper. And what I'm going to do is fold these in half and actually attach these to my flip flaps. I'm going to find a little arrow stamp so I can stamp on this so that there is a little handle to pull up and down. I've done this with previous projects. I just like having something there so people know that they can flip this one up. There's something underneath, and then I can put another one on this one here, so that they know to flip this one up to have a little look underneath as well. And I'm going to use red line tape to adhere sections of these on each side so that they're not going to come off at all. And I want to be mindful of where people are. Got this one on the right here. If I put this one over to the left here, it's too close to Erin's face. So I think it's going to work better if this one is over to the right and then this one is over to the left. It's a bit hard to do this and have them all sit in place because they just slide around with the plastic here. But I think that gives you an idea of what I'm going to do. Now it comes to the embellishing part. And I have to confess, I have been looking at this layout for a couple of days now. I finally got my ink so I could print off my photos, and I really wanted to show this layout with the completed photos on here. And because this has been sitting out for a while and I've been looking at it, I really loved this just the way it was, and I wasn't sure what embellishments I wanted to use. So I've brought in Forever Forest because I had a little bit of an idea on how to use these dies. So I have just picked these ones here. So there's 6 of these trees, and I've cut the large one right down to the small one, and I wanted a subtle look. Because there's all this wood grain, I didn't want to put bright pops of colour on here with my trees. So I had a little think about this, and I thought, why not whitewash some coloured cardstock to make the trees a little bit more subtle. I used that stiff wide brush with the white acrylic paint, and I just tapped it off quite a bit and painted back and forth across here. Now you can see this one here, I've got a little bit too much paint on there, so I purposefully didn't die cut from the pieces that were solid. And I have a whole tray here of different colours. Now these are close to my heart colours. There's sage, pine, the light side of charcoal. I thought the charcoal one looked really nice with the trees here because these are sort of grey trunks. So I'm just going to do a mixture of large and small ones. I'm not going to use all of these die cuts on this one layout. That would just be way too many. But I know that I'm going to definitely use these on future pages because I've got the Alaska portion of this trip to do as well. I don't want it too matchy-matchy. So what I'm going to do, I think, is just bring in some of these to go across the bottom here. I've got everything laid down now, and I've adhered my trees. I did put this one off to the edge. I do love it when I can put elements on the edge of a piece of paper and then I just trim that away. I think this helps to ground elements. I can't do it over this side because my tree would be floating up here. Now I'm going to just put some adhesive on this side now that that's finished so that stays down. And I've got my tabs here attached to the flip flaps. I did use early espresso on the edges of all these little tab elements here just to tie it in with the rest of the layout, and that clearly shows that that's an interactive element by putting this little arrow on. And this is from the Love This Moment set, and it's one I've used quite a bit on scrapbook layouts. I think it's a really good one, and I was considering putting a little word strips on here, but I think I'm going to call this done. I'm not going to put any dots or gems or sequins or anything on this. I love this just the way it is. Now I did want to show you, this is the previous page for this. So when it comes to lining up where my flip flaps are going to go, the first one I'm going to mark is this one here. So I'm not going to do all the cutting of this on camera for you. I'm going to link to that video where I've done that, but I did want to show you how I'm going to line this up so that I can get the slits in my memory protectors exactly where I want them. Now you do want to make sure that your page is right down to the bottom of the memory protector, and I just use a Sharpie to come in and do little circles on each side of where the flip flap is. And I go a little bit out from the edge of it rather than it being right up against the edge. And then what I'm going to do is pull this out and put this one down and push that back into my memory protector and make sure that I've got it to the bottom of the page. I've got a little mark here for this one underneath, but I'm also going to have to mark this one so that I can cut my memory protector so this one becomes interactive as well. So let me just push that right down to the bottom again. It's very important that you do that because you don't want it to be crooked on your page, because once you do cut a slit in your memory protector, if you've got it crooked, it's going to stay crooked and you don't want to have to start all over again. So this is where the edge of that flip flap is. So I'm going to come just off to the right of that and off to the edge of this one as well. And then I'm going to cut my memory protector as I've done in that other video. Make sure you check out the link if you don't know how to do this. I don't usually take over 3 days to get a page together, but with my printer ink crisis, thankfully at the store when I rang up, the girl that helped me was super helpful. So she had them for me the very next day. So I've been able to print those off. I just love flip flaps. They are so fun to play with and it really does create extra real estate. So on this layout, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 photos. And without flip flaps, I would either have a very photo heavy layout, which is perfectly fine, but I really loved the sketch from this sketchbook. So the link from that will be below. Or I would move on and make another double page spread. But I love how this part of our hike is contained on just one double page spread. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate all your kind comments and your likes, and those of you who are newly subscribed to my channel, thank you so much for doing that. As always, happy crafting and bye for now.